Hi guys, and welcome to my in-depth comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S6 and the Sony Xperia Z3. There is also the Edge, but I will just quickly mention that because pretty much they are the same and I would rather compare it with the S6. So let's start with the S6 and the Z3. If we see it in terms of size, the Z3 definitely is a little bit higher, taller, and slightly more wide, but it is definitely not a big thing. In terms of the thickness, the Z3 is 0.5 millimeter thicker, but you won't really notice it, therefore it doesn't have a camera bump, and if it's actually quite flat on the table, it actually looks thinner. But that's not really an issue. Both feel great in the hand, both are quite compact still. If you check the buttons, I think the power button is placed pretty much perfect on both. The exact height I would like to see. What is better on the Z3 is the volume rocker, because I can still access this quite easily from this side, where I have to inconveniently bend my fingers to get on this to on the other side, but it still works okay. Which I prefer on the Z3 is when I game, I can't hit anything. I can easily do this. On the S6, I had the issue of sometimes just hitting one of the volume buttons, so not the end of the world. If you check the front, I think the Z3 looks a little bit more elegant because just more minimalistic, doesn't have any buttons on, but therefore you have the convenience here with the fingerprint sensor, which right now for some reason didn't work properly, but it usually works quite great. So it's about what you prefer, a bit minimalistic or more functional with the S6. On the bottom we have nothing on the Z3. Here we have the speakers, the micro USB and the headphone jack, which I prefer to be on the bottom, but it is on the top on the Z3. So just to make it quick, both feel great in the hand. The Z3 feels a little bit, due to being heavier, more substantial. It is a little bit more better in terms of weight distribution because of the omnibalance design, but therefore the S6 is a little more compact and easier to hold. What I prefer is the flat sides here, because the flat sides make it easier to grip on. Here we have the round ones that can be a little bit slippery from time to time. Otherwise we have glass on both. Gorilla Glass on the Z3 and Gorilla Glass 4 on the S6, which I think feels definitely smoother and it is easier to clean, because as you can see, okay, now right now I cleaned them both, but the S6 is better against fingerprints, so I prefer this. Let's check the display now, because I think I've said it. I really won't choose a winner for the design, because I think that's really up for you. Personally, I slightly give it to the S6 personally, but just personally, and not really because of anything else. Okay, yeah, and that's what I meant. You will hit it a lot of times by accident. And again, yeah, it's really hard to use it in that hand. Okay, here we have it. We have QHD on the S6 and 1080p on the Sony Xperia Z3. So what about the sharpness? Yes, the S6 is slightly sharper, and on the video you definitely won't see it, but I think due to being pentile it doesn't look that much sharper, and I'm still absolutely fine with 1080p and don't see an issue with that at all. If we check the whites now, the S6 looks a lot red, which I already said is yellow in reality. And here on the video actually the Z3 looks better, but we have both two extremes here. The S6 is slightly too warm and the Z3 is not even slightly, but a little bit more than just slightly too cold. So that's why it looks more extreme here. Personally I prefer cold, even though I have to say the Z3 is extremely blue. And if you don't have them side by side you will be quite okay with both, but I think most people will be happier with the slightly yellow-white on the S6. In terms of blacks, on the video you won't see the difference here, but of course the S6 with AMOLED wins here by quite a margin. The contrast is just better, it just is the deeper black better here at all. If you check the colors here, I'm using adaptive display on the S6. You have different, more realistic color profiles, but I use the most pleasant one for me here in this video. So the S6, as you can see, both colors look completely different, and of course, yes, the S6 does oversaturate, it does add a little bit of boost, and it definitely looks more pleasant for the eye, but as you can see, it really goes a bit too wide. It exaggerates the colors because this looks way too brown as comparison for here, so the S6 looks a little bit less true to life than the Z3. But if I would have to choose one as a winner, I would definitely give it to the S6 because it just looks more pleasant. The Z3 here in the comparison really falls short. If you use it just as it is on its own, you will get used to it, and it is still a nice display. But yes, the S6 definitely is quite a bit better. Okay, let's get to the sound comparison. I will lay them both flat on the table. They can both reflect, but I will also do the mid-air for you to get a better perspective. Let's start with the Z3. And now let's get to the S6. Okay, let's do the same here. I have to add though, this is both being flat on the table, where they can use the table as some kind of resonance factor. If I do it mid-air, it will sound quite a bit different. Let's check it real quick. I think it is noticeable. The Z3 gets a lot of more bass once it is on the table because it can use the glass and then the table as a resonance factor. Same goes for the S6. As you can see, it will also get. It sounds a lot more flat in mid-air. I think that's quite noticeable. In terms of blocking, the Z3 you won't ever block because it's on the front. On the S6 it looks a bit different. So, my opinion. The Z3 sounds okay, but I'm not that happy anymore with the maximum volume because I've tested a lot more devices, and back then when I reviewed it I said the sound was great, but actually now I have to say it isn't as good as anymore. Because on the highest maximum volume it tends to distort a lot, and if you go just one step lower then it will be a lot less loud, which isn't the best. Otherwise, on the table you saw that there was a really nice bass, and then it was definitely better than this S6 in terms of bass. But that is on the table, and they usually don't use it that much on the table, more in mid-air. And mid-air I give it a clear win to the S6. It is a lot louder, as you maybe heard on the video. It is some kind of more of a free sound. It sounds a bit lighter. You have adjustment options on both. The Z3 is a lot more flexible here with the equalizer settings and so on. But still, this one is so much louder, and if not blocked, I don't care so much about the position, and I give it the winner here definitely to the S6. In terms of performance right now, let's check one app here. Here we have a Twitter app, and of course you have to decide for yourself because it's really up for you. As you can see, both are super smooth, but both tend to slightly stutter at the end of the scroll. It's not really a big thing. But one thing I have to mention, it looks like the Z3 in my opinion has a little bit more motion blur, and if you scroll very fast you will notice it more, and then it looks less smooth than it actually is in reality. But at least in this app the S6 definitely is a little bit smoother. Of course not always, this is just the momentum. Don't see this as a definite. Sometimes the one is smoother, sometimes the other is smoother. This is always a little bit of a thing like you see it right now. If you check them both right now in Google+. That's really, I really leave it up for you. I would say both are pretty comparable. If smooth, the S6 is slightly smoother, but if it hangs, as you can see here, sometimes it has the slightly harder lag. The Z3 has a little bit softer lag, but therefore sometimes a little bit more. In terms of being responsive, both do a great job here. Both can switch apps super fast. Not the issue. The Z3 has a little bit of the upper hand here, but not really by much. Let's quickly check the browsing. Sorry, it's a bit hard to handle both at the same time. same goes for the browser. As you can see here, both, let's go up to the top, both are absolutely smooth. The S6 right now has a little bit of trouble. I don't know why. Usually that's not the case. It does stutter. I did a fresh reboot for both, so they are both terms. But as you can see, the Z3 is absolutely top smooth, and the S6 is fine. It is totally okay. No problems here at all. Next app, Palaber, just real quick. And here both as well do a great job. As you can see here, super smooth. They both hang from time to time. That's just Android. I wouldn't blame either device for it. As you can see here, Z3, super smooth. S6, pretty much the same. So it's pretty hard to choose a definite winner. Just from my opinion, I would say the S6 is, if smooth, slightly smoother. The Z3 feels a little bit lighter, a little bit more responsive, a little bit snappy. But just if I say slightly, I mean ever so slightly. This is no difference. You would notice if you don't have both side by side. For gaming, I won't really choose a winner. Both are pretty much on both great terms and no problems here at all. So battery life is the big thing now to talk about. But I will make this quick because if you want more data on the battery, just check each reviews. But I would say it as like this. I got 2.5, maybe 3 hours over one day on the S6. And I get about 6 hours over one day on the Z3. Over 2 days, maybe 4 hours. This is just a real brief comparison. But I would say the Z3 almost has double the battery life of the S6. I know there are a lot of people saying I get 4 hours or I get 3.5, 5 solid hours on the S6. Personally, I don't get it because I don't use Google now. I don't use location services on both. And in the case of the S6, I didn't even use Twitter Sync, but usually they are pretty much the same. Otherwise, the setup is the same, but I get almost double the battery life, at least let's say 80% more. I'm not really sure why. If it's just for video playback, then the difference is a little bit smaller because the S6 is very efficient for video playback. I would say like 90-20%, like I said in my review, per hour of YouTube playback. Here the Z3 uses also maybe 20%, but if it's for real use, the difference is way smaller. I mean way bigger. Okay, what's the next? Let me quickly check. Okay, the next thing would be the software. As you can see, both don't really look a lot like stock. Okay, the Z3 looks more stock, but themed stock. And it behaves like themed stock. If you know stock, you won't really see anything you don't know. Of course, here we have, sorry, I know it's just this in German, but you have audio settings. That is pretty much the only thing you get. And in terms of display, you get a white balance setting. That is pretty much the only thing you get. On the S6, you get way more. You get a small light theming engine on the Z3 as well. But on the S6 is where you get most of the features. You get way more. You get the payment options. You get sound notifications. You get display options, motion and gestures. So if you want to know more about that, just go into my review. But just to make it quick, the Z3 is a little bit more minimal, more lightweight, and way closer to stock. Not in terms of look, because it is definitely a themed stock, but as you can maybe see here, this definitely looks way more stock than this. On the S6 though, you get a quite stock feeling device this year actually. Of course, it still doesn't look anything like stock. And especially with the theming engine, I have to say it looks quite nice. If you choose the right theme, it behaves quite good. You don't have a lot of gimmicky features, and the ones you are getting are quite usable and nice. If I would have personally to choose, since I don't use even the useful features of the S6, I would go for the Z3 features because personally I like it minimal and I like it the cleaner feel. But in terms of functionality, the S6 wins. If you want it just clean and stock, the Z3 would be the winner. Now, let's get to the camera and I will parallel to what you see as an overlay. Get the pictures and I will talk about them now. Okay, on the first picture you see, this is the S6. But I have to say that the picture looks quite a lot oversaturated, because if we switch now to the Z3, you will notice this looks way more washed out, but actually this is way more realistic in terms of colors. In terms of sharpness, the S6 was better, but in terms of accuracy, it was on the Z3. Here the next picture again, the S6. This time it did a way better job. As you can see, this is way more realistic, very sharp overall, very a lot of details, very nicely focused. On the Z3, things don't look bad at either though. It isn't really that sharp, but still good. It didn't capture it accurate, but both did a good job in terms of colors and so on. The next picture here, again, the S6 did a great job, especially if you check the grass or the leaves in the background, which are all very sharp, and even the front is super sharp and detailed. If we now switch to the Z3, you will see the background is way less sharp and it didn't catch all the details. It was more focused towards the foreground, but therefore it did a great job here as well. Z3, once again, as you can see, the stone has a lot of details, very nicely in terms of accuracy, also nice. The Z3 here did a quite similar job. So pretty much both on par. Now there is a little bit of a bigger difference here. As you can see, this tree here is completely in the shadow, and it did overexpose the background. I mean the heaven, but therefore the tree is not visible. If we switch to the Z3, we'll see it did a much better job here. You can actually see the tree and you get way more details, but this is, yeah, maybe just a bad picture on the S6. The next picture here again on the S6 looks very detailed. As you can see, the flower has all the details super sharp in focus, and the background is nicely defocused, even though this is just a normal picture in auto mode, no defocus or anything. But also the Z3 did a great job. Colors slightly more realistic. The S6 did oversaturate and boost it, which it does on pretty much all the pictures, but I think it does it so marginally and so pleasantly that I don't want to complain about it. Once again, here we have the S6, did a great job with the sunlight in the background. The flowers or the trees look nice. The Z3 here did also quite a good job. It had a little bit of a lens flare from the side, not really sure why, but it did capture it also quite well. Here again, the tree, this time the S6 did a great job. It did overexpose a little bit, but if we switch to the Z3, it also did slightly overexpose it, but both did a great job after all. Here we have the biggest difference. This is in low light. This was quite dark, and you actually see it way brighter than it was in reality. And here the S6 did an extraordinary job. Everything is super sharp and detailed. If you check the Z3 here, a lot blurrier. Not really that much noise, but it's definitely more blurrier. So this is it to sum up the camera qualities. The S6 for me, even though it's not as clear maybe on these pictures, but it is the way easier shooter. If you want to snap a picture real quick and get a great result, you will get this on the 6. Here it was very, very consistent. On the Z3, and I talked with a few people there, you can get extraordinary great shots, but you need more effort and more skills for that. Sometimes you need manual mode. On the S6, you can pretty much use auto mode all the time to get a great picture. On the Z3, it can be a little bit of a hit and miss. Okay, so it's time for the recap, just real quick, and then the rest is up for you to decide. In terms of design and build quality, I won't really choose a winner. Personally, I would maybe slightly prefer the Z3, but this is just for my personal preference. Yeah. Okay. Display, definitely the S6. It just is way more pleasant. Slightly, I would wish it to be corrector white, but still definitely the clear winner here. Sound, it shouldn't be that clear, but it is for me the S6 because it sounded just way louder and still clear and very nice. So I have to give it to the S6. In terms of performance, I ever so slightly give it to the Z3, but more of a personal taste because it is more snappier, more responsive, and has the softer lag, which I prefer. The S6 though is a little bit smoother, not quite as consistent, but still very snappy and so on. So the difference is really marginal and really up if you want it smoother than here, if you want it more responsive and snappy than the Z3. And this is what I prefer, but the difference is really so marginal. Battery life, the Z3 wins by a big margin. I would say almost double the battery life. And yes, if people get better battery life than I did on the S6, nice for them, but for me, just didn't cut it. Sorry. Software, I already told it in the review. I'm at a point where I'm absolutely, maybe not 100%, but 90-95% okay with TouchWiz. It does a great job. It looks good now, and a lot of people say still it is way too Samsung-y. I don't care. I'm totally fine with the software. Same as for the Z3. If I would have to choose, I would like to have the cleaner, but I know a lot of Samsung users will appreciate the extra features like with multi-window and so on. I think a big thing of that will be multi-window and the windowed mode. So really up for you what you want. If you want features or if you want it minimalistic. In terms of the camera now, I have to give the win definitely, clearly to the S6. It just captures the pictures way easier, way better and way more consistent. On the Z3 you can get great shots, but you need more effort for that. So who's the winner now? If I would be completely objective, it would be still hard to say because I have issues with the battery life of the S6. But if you don't care about battery life, you want a great feel in hand, the perfect display, a really amazing camera and a great sound and overall, this is the overall better phone. But it's not like the Z3 is so off in terms of everything. Okay, the display isn't as good, the sound isn't as good, and the camera maybe isn't as good, but it's really more of a personal choice. I still won't switch to the S6 because I like the more omnibalance feel. It feels a little bit more premium for me. It just feels a little bit more substantial. I don't have the buttons, and as you can maybe saw, I don't even use software buttons. I do all with gestures. So I couldn't care less about anything else. And of course in the video right now something didn't work out. Usually I don't have any issues. Maybe it's because the screen is a little bit more greasy and the sun here, I mean the light. But I don't use even buttons. And that's why I prefer the cleaner style, because everything is black and I have the whole screen just for the content and don't have anything. Of course you have the whole screen for the content here as well, but you have the buttons visible. But therefore you get the benefit of the fingerprint sensor. So it's really up for you to decide. So personally, I still will stay with the Z3 mostly because of the battery life. If the S6 would have been a little bit closer in terms of battery life, I would have maybe switched, but it's not like I want, because I'm quite cheap. If I paid $500 for the Sony Xperia Z3, and if I would have to pay again like $600-700 to get the S6, it would be harder just because I don't get much more than I got already on the Z3. If I wouldn't have any of these and money would be not a concern and the battery life of the S6 would be better, then I would get the S6. But with the battery life of the S6 I'm just not happy. If it's okay for you, but I want a whole day, and here I can even get 2 days. So maybe, I'm sure I'm not super objective here. And this is definitely of a personal preference. My personal preference still is in overall the Z3. Mostly because of the battery life, and it doesn't do anything really bad, and it's not that far off. Yes, the S6 has definitely a few advantages and is overall the better device. And if it wouldn't be for the battery life, then it would be almost 100% clearly the better device, but still. I don't really have much to talk here. Once again, I will talk about the S6 and S6 Edge, why I prefer one or the other in another video. But as for this review, what I said about the S6 still stands true also for the Edge. I will cut off this video now, and I hope it was helpful to you. And please let me know in the comments if anything was wrong or anything was super right. Until next time, bye.